Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do today is work on a one-point perspective drawing. Now, all of you have probably done this one time or another. And we're going to go ahead and work with this because it will work in association with all the vocabulary words that we're having this week. We're going to go ahead and start off with a very, very loose border running around here. It's going to look something like this. You guys should know how to pull borders by now. This isn't the same kind of paper that I'm asking you to use, but you can either use the paper out of your notebooks or use the cream paper, whichever way you want to do it. We're going to use this in a horizontal format, which means it's going to be longer than it is taller. We're going to go ahead and put the week code, which is the 5th week, I believe, and this is going to be called 1 point. And perspective. Go back, make sure you get your name over here on the other side. Doesn't make any difference what you should do. You should always use good presentation. Always have your name and have the pieces that are in here like this here. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and start off by putting an imaginary line across the middle of the picture. You should know how to find the middle of the picture by now, running diagonals, which will give you sort of the center. You do that by visually working from diagonal to diagonal. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a horizontal line. It's going to be sort of an imaginary horizontal line. Run it across all the way across the picture like this. Now this is called the horizon line in the new perspective method here. Now this is the second method that I'm going to be teaching you. The first method we talked about was the isometric drawing method, or the 8-point or the vertical 1-7 methods that Disney used a lot. This is the second type of method. It's 1-point perspective. Now this is actually older. The isometric method is older than this one here. 1-point perspective was invented about 500 years ago. We've primarily been using it ever since. So just like this method here that Disney uses, it only uses 3 basic lines: vertical and to direction 1 and direction 7. Now in 1-point perspective, it's somewhat the same. We're going to start off by coming down here to the bottom, and we're going to put a 1-inch square, which is about 1 inch from the bottom. I'm going to put it right in the middle, just like this here. Again, just sketch it in. Now this drawing method uses nothing but vertical and horizontal lines. We're going to go ahead and put 2 more boxes in here, and we're going to keep them in alignment. Halfway to the border from this piece to the next piece, and it'll be right about here. We're going to go ahead and put in another 1-inch box. Kind of like this here. And then we're going to move on over here, putting a 3rd box in there. We're going to go ahead and make sure it's a little bit, or a whole lot more, closer to the border over here. Again, they're all about the same size, and they're in alignment. They share common lines. Alright, and just for clarity, we're going to go ahead and call this row A, this is going to be B, and this is going to be C. Works like this here. Now in this method, unlike the 8-point method or the Disney method, we do use horizontal lines a whole lot. And in this method, it only uses 3 direction lines. And those 3 direction lines go like this. They're either going to be vertical, they're going to be horizontal, or they're going to go to the point. And the point we've established back here in the center already. Okay, that's why we call this, of course, 1-point perspective. So what that means is we're going to take some of the ideas we've been talking about for a while, which basically says that wherever there's a corner or a line changes direction from the face, a new line is formed. So up in this corner, a new line is going to be growing off of it. And it's only one direction it can go, either vertical, horizontal, or in this case, to the point. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the next corner. We're going to come over here. I knew a new line will be made. It has to go to this point here. And then, of course, we go to the next one and it has to go up to this point here. Very, very simple concept. Now you may want to ask, well, what about this corner down here? Doesn't it make a line? Well, yes, it does. This line goes back to the point, just like the others, but you're not going to be able to see it because it's overlapped by the object itself. Let's go ahead and add some thickness to this, and the best way to do that is to make a series of vertical lines coming down like this here. I want you to go ahead and run it all the way back, about halfway back. We're going to follow the rule of half. Now remember, I'm going to rush through this a little bit quicker than I normally would. You can always pause the tape that you're listening to and get caught up at any time. Now we're going to go ahead and close it off. Okay? Taking a set of horizontal hatches, just a loose horizontal hatch, coming across the top. Do not try to match them up with the ones over here. So you're just going to have it going up and back. And then what I'm going to do is release the object from its extension lines. And that's pretty simple and easy to understand. It works its way across like that. We're going to go over here to C now. It works the same exact way. We're going to go ahead and start off with two direction lines, vertical, horizontal. And whenever a corner is created, a new line will be made. But these lines are now going to go up and to the left, but they're still going to go back to the point. These lines do not need to be perfect. Again, if you're having troubles with your wavy lines or whatever it may be, always turn it to the most reliable line you'll ever learn to draw, and that's this line that pulls to the point like this here. It works a lot easier if you do it that way. So we're in group C over here. What we're going to do now is you can see how this is starting to go back into the space. It looks sort of real. Now about the half of an inch or the thickness of your pencil, we're going to go ahead and put 3 more lines in here. We're going to divide it like this here. Instead of doing a loose hatch, we're going to go ahead and break it up. Now this will be the hardest thing for a lot of students, is these lines will want to go ahead and they'll start looking like this. A lot of students will start making lines perpendicular to your baseline. You don't want that to happen. That's not a good thing. You want to keep your parallel lines or your vertical lines always vertical. That's called keeping them in alignment, another one of your vocabulary terms. Now wherever it makes contact with the extension line going back, we're going to take a series of horizontal lines, pull them back like this here. Alright? So now this looks like just 3 boxes going back, and they're all sort of connected to one another. What we're going to do is fix this up now. And the way we're going to fix it is we're going to erase the lines of the extension lines between block here in the front and the block in the back. And then get rid of that extension lines here, here, and there. And then what we're going to do is go ahead and add the lines that we need to put in there. Now what lines and what direction lines do you put in there? Well, you take a line inventory. Remember, there's only 3 direction lines that this can go in: vertical, horizontal, or to the point. So we were missing a horizontal line here. If I take a line inventory, vertical and to the point, that means this line has to be horizontal. Same thing happens here. Go up to this corner and it tells me that that line has a horizontal line and a to the point, so this one has to go vertical. Just kind of the way it works. Now we could add another cube back here doing the same thing. Works out the same exact game. Easy enough to do, okay? Now, what we're going to do next is one of the definitions of shading is to help clarify a picture. As the picture starts developing, it starts getting more and more confusing the more and more lines you put in there. There's a few tricks as artists that we know of to help eliminate the situation. We've got a lot of lines here. And what we want to do is go ahead and add a little bit of line variety to it. These are all sort of sketchy, light lines. These are the layout lines. But I'm going to add a third line into this, and this is called the base line. And what I want you to do is on the base of every one of these objects, you're going to darken them in, kind of like this here. It's a sketchy line. They don't need to be perfect. Now, I'm also doing a little trick here. We were talking about dominance the other day. When dominance is a visual strength area. If I made these two dark, strong lines come together and make a contact at the corner, it's going to attract way too much attention, and we don't want that to happen. So most people always sort of leave these corners a little bit vague. They don't let them touch. Then what we're going to do is come back and do the things that we know how to do. Okay, we're going to add some shading to this. So we're going to hatch in vertical lines. Now this is also going to be a good practice for you to keep these lines vertical rather than being perpendicular to the baseline. We're going to work this down like this here. Pretty simple. I'm just using pressure differentiation to separate the dark side from the light side. Score a couple lines on top, creating surface. Just kind of like that. Now, if we're going to cross direction these things, it also says that we have to cross direction in one of the three lines that we've been talking about all day. This has to go to the point. Cross-hatching direction goes to the point, or it's going to be vertical. Next thing we're going to do is go ahead and add shadow. Whenever you've got shading, you've got shadow. We can only use direction lines that we're prescribed to use, vertical, horizontal, or to the point. I think it would be best suited if we just sort of take some horizontal lines and drag them out like this. This would be the easiest way of doing it. But here's kind of a neat thing that you want to use. Things, as we know, get further away from us, they get higher in the picture frame, and they get smaller. Well, the things that most people sort of forget is the shadows will also get higher in the picture plane, and they will get smaller. The way to calculate that is, imagine that our light source, the sun or the light bulb or whatever, is at the top of all these objects, throwing sunshine down at a 45-degree angle. If that 45-degree angle comes down here and hits this corner, it continues down and through. I'm going to make this real dark so you can see what I'm talking about. And hits the edge of the shadow line right there. This will show us where the exact top of that cube would really be in relationship to the shadow. And what that does is it creates this point here, which is really, really important. Because now what we're going to do is run an extension line back to the vanishing point. So I know what the extent of all my shadows should be. Take an eraser, come back now, and sort of fix up your shadow, keeping them all in alignment. Works out pretty good that way. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and show you another term that I think we've been talking about for a while, and that is what's called foreshortening. And the word foreshortening means to be distorted by perspective. And what we mean by that is it's going to look odd or strange, foreshortened, okay? And what we mean by that is that whenever a drawing in a perspective situation gets right above, right below, or to the left or the right or the horizon line, there's going to be distortions to the objects. Most objects that we draw all look, we see three sides of it, right? In this case, we're not going to see three sides of the object. What we're going to see is, because it's right under there, is lines going back to the vanishing point, and then you won't see the other ones because they are overlapped by the form, okay? That's distortion. That's called foreshortening. We're going to take this row B here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to break it up by, again, adding 3 more lines, about a pencil thickness away from each other. Kind of like this here. And then we're going to go ahead and cut these off with a vertical line. So you can see these looks like 2 boxes that we're just looking down on. We're going to add a little bit of shading and baselines to help clarify the picture. Put the baseline in here. We're going to go ahead and shade this in, and it has to be the same exact type of shading that we use on the face of these blocks here. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to throw a couple surface lines on top so it kind of looks like an object. Again, I mostly get everything figured out where I want it before I bring out the good old trusted eraser. So you'll see how this kind of works now. Since we're working in this as a group, you can never separate one object in the group for the whole thing. Everything within the picture frame should have a harmony or a unity to it. Again, more vocabulary. And so we need to do whatever we did on these pieces, we need to do sort of on the same thing here. So we're going to add this on the block A. We're going to go ahead and darken it up over here. Now I can see the base lines on this side, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of make this look like it's a group of stacked bricks or stacked boxes, thin boxes, or whatever. It looks like that way. It's a pretty simple idea. Like I said, it's been around a long, long time. What I'm going to do now is, once you get this far along, I'm going to draw some more shapes out here. I'm going to see if you can figure out how to do those on your own. We're going to come back over here. We're going to put a very, very large rectangle. Kind of like this. Notice that it's below the horizon line. And then we're going to come back over here onto this side, and we're going to put one over here. Hopefully vertical. And this one is setting on the horizon line. And then we're going to go put one up here. Right on top. Okay, so if this was called A, this is B, that's C. We're going to call this D, E. We're going to call this one F. Okay? And then the most difficult of them all, just like in the handouts we've been doing up to this point, each letter that goes up higher is harder to do. We're going to take a square, we're going to put it right over the top of the vanishing point here, okay? I know that's not much of a square, but let's just say we're putting a rectangle there. And we're going to call this, let me see, A, B, C, D, E, F, and we're going to call this G. I'm going to let you guys loose to go ahead and try to figure these out on your own. You talk with one another, figure out how to do them. Make sure that you do get them all done, and add the shading and shadow. Make it consistent with the stuff we've already done. Have a good day. We'll shout at y'all later.